He dreamt that he was holding to his breast the lump of earth which the god Triton had given him, and was suckling it with streams of white milk. The dream reminded Jason of an oracle of Apollo himself, exclaiming, "My noble friend, you are marked out for great renown. When you have thrown this clod of earth into the sea, the gods will make an island of it, and there your children's children are to live. This is the island of Thera."
Defining the exact date of the Minoan eruption is vital in synchronizing different chronologies for civilizations of the Mediterranean, where 2nd millennium BC cultures record this cataclysmic event. Current studies of these records have led to suggested dates for the eruption between about 1650 and 1500 BC. Pinpointing the exact date could give further insight into the actual date of Homer's Troy and other contemporary civilizations.
The effects of the eruption were devastating. Over 60 cube kilometers of material was ejected from the mouth of the volcano, and a 100 cube kilometer cloud. This is roughly 4 times the amount of ejecta from Krakatoa. This eruption was approximately a 6 to 7 on the volcanic explosivity index. It's believed that it completely destroyed the Minoan civilization at Akrotiri on the island of Santorini, and could have caused a tsunami that would have ravaged the island of Crete. It's also believed that this was the trigger that caused the Minoans to fall to the Mycenaeans.
Other scientists have explored underwater to pinpoint a possible date for the Thera explosion. By looking at different layers of volcanic material, volcanologists are able to understand what types of volcanic processes took place during the eruption and how they have changed over time. The majority of erupted material found was in the form of pyroclastic flows that advanced quickly into the ocean around the island. Most of the volcanic deposits from this eruption are therefore now on the seafloor around Santorini and have yet to be studied in detail. Scientists compared a nearby volcano, Colombo, with Santorini. The underwater camera found that inside the Colombo volcano, the crater floor was entirely covered by a thick blanket of bright reddish-orange bacterial matter, which is a good indicator of hydrothermal venting nearby. The scientists determined the thickness, distribution, and volume of the submarine volcanic deposit of pumice and ash on the seafloor around Santorini, and found that a thick pyroclastic deposit representing pyroclastic flows from the Minoan eruption can be traced up to 30 kilometers from the volcano, and that it ranges in thickness from 10 to 80 meters. At the Santorini caldera, a large number of hydrothermal vents were discovered, but in contrast to the high-temperature venting found in the Colombo submarine volcano, only relatively low-temperature venting was observed within the Santorini caldera.
An excavation in mainland Greece has uncovered Therapumis from a stratum that also contains late Minoan 1A style pottery, dating to circa 1550 to 1475 BC. This suggests that the explosion from Thera occurred sometime in the early 15th century or late 16th century BC and covered a sizable area. Late Minoan style pottery examples are the chieftain cup and the harvester vase that were found together in Hagia Triada. The chieftain cup dates to circa 1650 to 1500 BC. It is 12 centimeters high and 9 centimeters in diameter. On the front, it depicts two males facing each other. The back shows three men carrying a large animal skin. Interpretations as to the meaning of the scene vary, with many modern researchers assuming that we are dealing with a coming-of-age rite. On the front of the cup, the man on the right wears elaborate jewelry and carries a staff. The figure on the left is shorter and wears more simple garments. Recent scholarship has identified the long-handled object in the left figure's hand as a ritual sprinkler. This has led to the belief that this figure is a priest holding a sword and sprinkler as symbols of the right figure's religious and temporal authority. The priest and the three men in the back seem to be participating in a ceremony presenting the right-hand figure with an ox hide. Perhaps we are even dealing with the representation of the induction of a young king. The harvester vase dates to circa 1550 to 1500 BC, with some scholars assuming that both vases were made by the same craftsman. The harvester vase depicts 27 men walking with harvesting tools on their shoulders. 26 of them are wearing the exact same garments. The leader's ornaments on the far right of the cup differ slightly from the remaining harvesters in that he is carrying a staff, and his robes are fringed differently, prompting the assumption that he is a priest leading a ritualistic procession. More direct archaeological evidence for dating the Thera explosion can be found in Akrotiri and Santorini. In Akrotiri, we find pithoi depicting dolphins and floral paintings, and wall paintings depicting monkeys and other such natural things. This suggests that we are dealing with a culture that is in touch with its natural surroundings, comfortable and advanced enough to depict them in their art. What is even more astounding is the archaeological evidence for ritual in Thera when we look at the House of the Ladies in Akrotiri. The House of the Ladies was excavated in 1845, and systematic excavation were carried out from 1895 to 1903, then resumed after World War II. The house is most notable for its wall paintings that represent women in activity involving costume, cosmetics, and ceremonies. This particular fresco depicts two women in Minoan ceremonial dress, and we can see them wearing skirts with the bodice exposing the breasts, as they are applying a similar costume to a third woman, presumably in preparation for a ritual where these garments are worn. The focus on florals in many of the houses in Thera, and the focus on ritualistic imagery on the Minoan-style pottery, shows that the Minoans drew their inspiration for decoration from the world around them, from ritual activity and from nature itself. The Minoans, and the Therans especially, were most likely at the height of their civilization when they were wiped out by the natural disaster, suggesting that the earthquake hit them in the 15th century BC.
Another school of thought has taken a different stance on the timeline of the Theran eruption. Scientists have used carbon dating to estimate the time period of this disastrous eruption. Carbon dating has been widely accepted in the scientific community as a reliable way to date ancient fossils. Carbon dating relies on very natural processes, radioactivity, and food chains. Carbon-14 is formed in the atmosphere when nitrogen atoms are hit by cosmic rays. These rays create an extra neutron, transforming the nitrogen atom into a carbon-14 atom. These atoms are then absorbed by plants and travel up the food chain through consumption. So all living creatures, therefore, have a specific amount of carbon-14 in their systems, when the organism is no longer consumed and begins to decay, with a very specific half-life. Researchers can measure the amount of carbon-14 in a fossil and compare it to the level of regular, stable carbon in the same fossil. This ratio can give the researchers an age of the fossil. Looking at carbon-14 levels in seeds, fossils, and recently a found olive tree buried in ash, researchers have pinpointed the date to 1660 to 1613 BC with a 96% confidence. That's more than 100 years before the archaeologists believe the eruption happened.
An ice core is a core sample that is typically removed from an ice sheet. As the ice forms from the incremental buildup of annual layers of snow, lower layers are older than upper, and an ice core contains ice formed over a range of years. The properties of the ice and the recrystallized inclusions within the ice can then be used to reconstruct a climatic record over the age range of the core, normally through isotopic analysis. This enables the reconstruction of local temperature records and the history of atmospheric composition. Volcanic ash, or tephra, found in an ice core from Greenland, has been claimed to be from the Minoan eruption of Thera. If true, this would date the eruption. There are substantial methodological problems with the trace element analysis as reported in several journals. Even allowing for these problems, though, it seems very likely that the Theran and Greenlandic tephras have different trace element compositions. Material from an Alaskan volcano, Aniakchak, would be expected to arrive simultaneously through the tropospheric flow. The geochemical similarities between the Aniakchak glass and the ice core glass, together with the significant differences between the ice core glass and the Minoan glass, led scientists to conclude that the glass shards in the ice core were sourced from Aniakchak and not from Thera. The similarities in the major and trace element compositions of the Aniakchak and ice glass are confirmed by single-grain analysis of the Aniakchak tephra. These are sufficient to confidently assign the ice core ash as 1642 BC to the caldera-forming eruption from Alaska, and not from the Minoan eruption of Santorini.